làm còi nhạ so hương giang của các cõi thiên đàng, cụ vẽ họa say bong là rốc bong quốc hà này, gào bạ nọ span, rạ tọa tầng tra, nè hương bình ngoay, có to lòi tiếng Anh.
At the moment, the leader of Chechnya acts the same. He is a complete puppet of Putin, of the Kremlin. He even brought his people to Ukraine to kill the Ukrainian people for Putin, for the Kremlin. And he should know there was no reason to do that. But because Russia completely controls Chechnya, so all the leaders, whoever they might be, if they don't listen to the Kremlin, if they don't do what the Kremlin orders, they will not survive. Not to talk about continue to be in the leading role in Chechnya. So, if Ukraine loses, it will be the same. Russia will install any local leader there in Ukraine just to be a slave and listen to absolutely every order from the Kremlin.
Yes, Master.
You can see the evidence.
Yes, yes, Master.
And this Mr. Kadyrov, the so-called head of the Chechen Republic, since 2007 until now. That is a long, long time for head of a state.
Yes, Master.
Similar to Putin and the president of Belarus. They have things in common. Maybe that's why they like each other. And in order to survive so long as a head, I guess he has to be the absolute hand and feet of the head of Russia, the Kremlin.
Yes.
Yes.
Kadyrov is brutally oppressing, killing, murdering, torturing the Ukrainians because this is the same mentality as Putin, and he is absolutely under Kremlin's control. But I don't know if he is proud of himself or he just has to for survival. Because if he truly wants to be proud of himself, he should not do all this. He's a man. He should be an independent thinker and a true leader of his people. And instead, he became like a devil for the Kremlin.
For any Chechens who dare to question Kadyrov, the options are morbid. Either stay and die or run in fear.
I bartkalboks lielostalums, pitnes, eldich, juitsalums. Uswe je na, tjuak na, hoe hier in het zoutse weems. Wat is dat houden?
And nowhere seems to be safe. Secretive Chechen death squads hunt Europe and further afield. Critics of Kadyrov have been brutally murdered in Berlin, Vienna, Lille, and even Dubai. More recently, Kadyrov has turned his aggression into the Chechen Republic's LGBTQ+ population. Homosexuality and gender nonconformity have always been a taboo in the state. But in 2017, Kadyrov began what has since been described as a genocide of young men and women.
It became a project of eliminating every person who could possibly be suspected of LGBTQ emotions or thoughts, if not activity.
Survivors have spoken about being held in concentration camp-like detention centers, where they were beaten and tortured with electric shocks. Others were freed with the understanding that their own families would punish them even worse than the state. When the media began to report this, Kadyrov declared that gay Chechens do not exist.
Это ерунда. У нас таких людей нету. Нету у нас геев подальше от нас, чтобы очистили кровь. Там, если есть таких, пусть забирают.
Escaped survivors of the genocide are still fearful for their lives, fearful that Kadyrov's death squad could come and find them. Kadyrov's reign seems to have no limits, but one wonders when he will go too far, even for Putin. Putin rarely condemns Kadyrov, and Russian money pours into the region.
For Vladimir Putin, he is still convenient for the Kremlin. And that's the reason he remains in power and is able to do whatever he does.
It's really a very sad affair. I think his people will not like him, or they don't like him, or maybe they never liked him, but they just have to be quiet because they fear war, they fear more bloodshed and more torture, more suffering from Russia.
Yes, Master.
I think he also has, I hope, maybe I'm wrong, he also had some moments of shame and regret, but he was already under the yoke, could not fight against the Kremlin, so he had to be brutal. Or maybe he is brutal, because his soldiers that he brought to Ukraine to die or to fight are reportedly very vicious, extremely brutal.
Yes, Master.
So maybe they're all the same gang, just in different locations. That's why they get together and try to destroy wherever they can in Ukraine. So there will be no future for Ukraine if it's lost. There will be no freedom. And as I told you already, the whole of Ukrainian people all stand up against the war from the Kremlin. So if Russia has a chance to control Ukraine, then all these people will be treated like prisoners, slaves, or enemies continuously, and they will suffer no end. They will suffer no end.
Yes, Master. They will be brutally oppressed.
Or molested. The Russians will continue murdering or raping or taking everything from them.
Yes, Master.
And they might not give them enough food to eat just like before, just like decades ago.
Yes, Master.
Therefore, that's why I don't care what happens to me because of all this karma. I have to say it. I have to say NATO has to come in, totally committed to having Ukraine, to flush Russia out.
Yes, Master.
And if not, then Europe and other countries have to courageously stand up, go in to have Ukraine, because that means they're helping themselves, and they will be safe if Russia loses the war in Ukraine.
Yes, that's right.
If Ukraine regains their complete freedom, regains their land, regains their democracy, just like before anything happened, then Europe will be safe as well. Other countries also will be safe, not just Europe alone.
Yes, Master.
Many other countries or states like Georgia, South Ossetia, Abkhazia region, Nagorno-Karabakh have the bloody hands of Russia on them and the destruction of all that. So many millions of people died because of Russia's invasion or interference or colonization, yeah?
Yes, Master.
Because of that, millions of people died everywhere, wherever Russian leaders went with their army.
Yes, Master.
Despite all that, the world still has forgiven Russia because they have things to offer.
Yes.
But I can't believe it. This kind of brutal regime from one leader to another, it's like a succession of brutality.
Yes.
Despite that, Russia is one of the most important member nations and one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council.
Yes, Master.
And that's why the United Nations seem to be useless, hopeless, and helpless.
Yes, Master.
Even in such a case like Ukraine, they almost cannot do anything to help.
Yes, that's right.
Oh my God. Can you see that?
Yes, Master.
And now NATO still continues to deny Ukraine, that welcome any other rich and famous and prestigious countries to go in as a member of NATO.
Yes, Master.
So it's all about money, profit, and prestige. Nothing truly idealistic, nothing truly noble, or even love thy neighbor type of doctrine.
Yes, Master.
So I told you to hell with the rules.
Yes.
There are no rules when it comes to helping your neighbor in need, especially in desperate need, in life and death matters.
Yes, exactly.
Especially they know that the enemy of their neighbor is brutal, vicious, and has a history of atrocities everywhere before.
Yes, Master.
Before, the chief of NATO, Mr. Stoltenberg, had earned a good name in the world because he kind of negotiated between Russia and Norway at that time for the accord between these two countries, between their sea, because there's the sea between them to extract oil.
Yes,
Yes,
But at that time, it wasn't war. It was just a dispute.
Yes,
right. Yes.
It was a talk between neighbors. Hey, where is my sea? Where's your sea? That's all.
Yes.
Just a row about the fence, the invisible fence.
Yes, exactly.
So it was easy to talk it out, to negotiate, and help to settle it out.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
But now it's a big war. It's life and death and bloody and destruction everywhere in one country. And the country has done nothing wrong.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Just fit in Europe and the world as one of the countries that export the most farming produce.
Yes, Master.
And even in some countries that don't import Ukrainian farm produce. But because of the war in Ukraine, they don't have fertilizer.
Yes.
Yes, Master.
And now they are just hanging in there. They're stuck. They can't do their farming. In Africa, for example, or even Brazil. Brazil is affected by the Russian war in Ukraine. Actually, it's not the Russian people. It is the government. It's Putin and the gang.
Yes, Master.
Because they continue the tradition of Stalin.
We have a system in which we are making money out of death, disease, and destruction, and every one of these things is producing revenues for some corporation or the other. So we are stuck in the system of normalized violence. Dr. Sailesh Krishna Rao, PhD, vegan.